huge story is emerging this morning, which has huge implications for the government and, as you said, the country. Having insisted yesterday that she would stand firm, the Prime Minister and her Chancellor are expected to decide to announce that they are not proceeding with that decision to abolish the top rate of tax. That's the 45 pence tax rate. It affects 1% of earners, those earning £150,000 a year. They were going to scrap it from April 2023 next year. And as I understand it, they will now not proceed with that policy. It's a massive U-turn. Even yesterday, as I said, the Prime Minister said we have to stay the course. But the rebellion, not just from backbenchers, but I think also from within government, has obviously proved too great.
OK, why have they done this? In a great scheme of things, it's not a lot of money, but they weren't reading the room, were they?
That's exactly right, Kay. It wasn't a lot of money. It saved £2 billion in tax cuts, or cost £2 billion rather, and that was in a £45 billion package. But it was not consulted upon in Cabinet. Liz Truss told the BBC that yesterday, and Kwasi Kwarteng took the decision. One Cabinet Minister said to me it wasn't right that he hadn't told the Cabinet. He should have discussed it more widely, given that it was such a contentious policy. And the political toxicity, if you like, of cutting the top rate of tax for the richest people, or richest earners, should I say, in the country amid a cost of living crisis has prompted a huge rebellion. And we've seen it with Michael Gove yesterday publicly coming out saying it should be opposed, and Grant Shapps, who I think you're going to be speaking to soon, Kay, saying in an article in the Times this morning that it was an unforced error harming the government's economic credibility. Now, those calls are not just happening outside government, they're happening inside too. Liz Truss obviously wants to reset the dial. She wants to get rid of this story, this problem, this rebellion. It was going to dominate the party conference, and they are now, I think, preparing to announce that they will not proceed. It's the first massive U-turn of a government and of a Prime Minister that has insisted all along that the political optics of policies is not her concern. She wants to do what's right. She's told me that she's prepared to be unpopular. This clearly a step too far, and I think it speaks to the fact that underneath the smooth exterior of this conference that the Conservatives are trying to portray, that there are a lot of choppy waters underneath. And this is a Prime Minister who's now having to make decisions she might not want to in order to try and take down the political temperature. OK, so she threw the Chancellor under the bus yesterday. Is the writing on the wall for him now? I think that the Chancellor has had a really difficult start because of this policy. I've asked a lot of people in the party about that. There's no doubt that they would agree that he has been embattled. But I think the thing that Conservatives say to me as well is that the project, if you like, of this radical change to economic policy is really being driven by Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng in unison with the other two in their economic quad, as they call it, which is Simon Clarke, the Levelling Up Secretary, and Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Business Secretary. And quite frankly, I think Liz Truss at the moment is quite politically vulnerable because she doesn't have a groundswell of support in the backbenches, and some very, very senior people such as Grant Shapps and Michael Gove are making it difficult for her. So however she is feeling about her Chancellor or tensions, she might decide now is not the time. I should also say, though, that I have pressed those around Liz Truss about this sense of tension between her and her Chancellor. And on the issue of the 45 pence rate of tax, I was told yesterday that the Prime Minister fully backed Kwasi Kwarteng's decision to do it, even though today they are reversing. So in terms of the outward perception, Number 10 is certainly trying to present it as a united front between the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. But this is obviously going to be hugely politically difficult for Kwasi Kwarteng on the day that he is delivering his economic speech on the economy, his speech on the economy, in which he was about to say this afternoon, we have to stay the course. And he'll kick off the day, we expect, with a reversal on that decision to abolish the top rate of tax, the 45 pence rate.
And what does that mean for conference, Beth, as a result? You made the point that it was originally going to be dominating conference, that it was 45p down to 40p. Now, I'm guessing, it's going to dominate conference, that the lady we're seeing on the screen has already done a U-turn.
I think there's two ways to look at this. This was going to dominate conference. Even last night, when I was talking to ministers, to government figures, they were saying, well, look, we can delay the vote. We don't have to vote on this measure until March next year on the abolition of the rate, so we can buy some time and we can park the issue. But clearly, the building of the rebellion led by Michael Gove and now Grant Shapps this morning, there has been a political calculation that if they don't reverse on this policy, they can't get past it at this conference. And I read it, and let's see what they say. We haven't heard anything yet. It's just what I understand is going to happen. It might be that they hope that they can reverse this decision today, get it over and done with, and then reset and get on with the conference, because obviously politically number 10 and number 11 have realised that with this row going on through conference, it will completely dominate and drown out everything else. But I think you're right that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister, having been so publicly resolute in saying we are not for turning, will have a lot of explaining to do today as to why they are going to change the policy.
Why today, Beth? What's happened?
Well, as I said, I think there was a big brewing rebellion, and it was framing this whole conference in a very negative way of a new Prime Minister in but a few weeks coming to a conference where, I mean, the Times was reporting that 14, I hadn't totted them all up, but 14 MPs were publicly saying you cannot do this at this point in time when there's a cost of living crisis. And the other way you can look at this is that Liz Truss is listening to her backbenchers, that she will adapt if she sees that something is not politically viable. So that's one way you could interpret what they are going to do. But it is no doubt a very difficult thing to explain when a Prime Minister has insisted for the past week that they will not reverse the policy. The political rebellion has clearly become too great, and they want to do a U-turn and hopefully for them quickly move on.
Yeah, but I mean, she was resolute yesterday on that she wasn't going to do that U-turn, wasn't she, Beth? And she was throwing her, as I said, her Chancellor under the bus yesterday morning. And now it looks as though she's on the cusp of changing her mind. We believe an announcement around about 7:30, something like that, probably tying in with the markets. Is it down to somebody like Michael Gove, who you mentioned, who is always, he may not be, in the top echelons of government at the moment, but he's always somebody that is going to influence the Conservative Party?
Look, Claire, I think the thing is that if we step back on what's going on kind of beneath the surface in the Conservative Party, Liz Truss only won in the first round of votes from MPs 50 votes. She then went on to win the leadership, but she never won publicly the majority support of the parliamentary party. And that tells us that she, yes, has a very supportive cabinet, and she has a big chunk of the party that ideologically agree with her in terms of trying to turbocharge the economy in the way that she is doing. But at the same time, if she cannot take her party with her, and if the Conservative infighting continues all through her first conference, when she's already 33 points down in one poll and other polls all putting the Labour leader in high double digits and even into 20 points plus, if she cannot take her party, then she is in seriously deep trouble. And I think that there has been a political calculation here that they do not want this row over the abolition of the 45 pence rate, which, as you said, is a small element of the entire package of that mini budget, to completely swamp this conference. I mean, one senior Conservative said to me last night, it simply was a mistake. The bankers' bonus decision and the top rate of tax were two relatively small policy announcements in a massive package, but they have completely distorted the way in which this budget was received. And the prospect of cutting tax rates for the highest earners in society when people are struggling with double-digit inflation, the prospect of rising mortgage rates, those high energy bills, even though there is government support, they are still running high. Not being able to lift public sector play with inflation, and even a discussion on whether or not benefits will be uplifted by earnings rather than inflation. It is really making Tories extremely anxious for their constituents, anxious about the prospects of re-election. And actually, for a Prime Minister who said she would plough on, overnight, clearly, she has listened and taken soundings and realised that she needs to U-turn on this policy. I imagine they will try and keep it very contained and quickly move on. Let's see if they can.